Right, Celtic are back tomorrow. It's game 2 of the season. Really need to watch what we do that. Don't want to do that to you, that'd be horrible. We're playing Ross County. Today we are going to preview the game. We're going to do team news, predicted 11s, take a look at our opponents and much, much more. Just want to start with a couple of bits of news, just pretty quickly. I know this isn't the 87 Black and Tangerine YouTube channel, but I do just want to say a well done to Dundee United last night for their victory over AZ Alkmaar. I watched the game. I thought it was great to see a Scottish team win a game like that. Great to see Tannadice so full. As Celtic fans, we know what AZ Alkmaar are all about. We only just squeezed past them in the Europa League last year. Very difficult match, especially away from home. So hopefully Dundee United can complete the job next week. But even just last night on its own was a great result for them and for Scottish football as well. And of course they do have a couple of ex-Celtic players in their ranks as well. So well done Dundee United. We are actually due to face them in 3 weeks at Tannadice. That is looking like a tough match if yesterday is anything to go by. But there could be good news for Celtic in that result yesterday, in that if Dundee United do manage to get past Alkmaar next week, they'll just have played another Thursday night fixture before they face us at Tannadice. So, like I said yesterday, maybe it's not a massive factor, but it certainly can't be a bad one for Celtic to be going into these games with the opponents having just played huge games days before. Hearts were the other one we touched on yesterday. That game is actually sold out, the club have announced today. Celtic Park sold out. And we all know what a sellout at Celtic Park means nowadays. Yeah, 45,000 people there. On to tomorrow, where we make the 180 mile trip north to Dingwall, just past Inverness, to take on Ross County at the Global Energy Stadium. We will do Celtic team news in a few minutes because there was a couple of wee interesting bits today from Ange. But first on the opposition. They finished 6th in the Premiership last year. Actually finished 10th in terms of points and goal difference. But the way the league works with a split, it was a 6th place finish for Ross County. As is usually the case at clubs like County, there's been a huge player turnover over the summer. Regan Charles-Cook and Joseph Hungbo, who were probably their 2 key men last season, have both departed the club, but they do seem to have added some real quality over the summer, especially from down south. This is how they lined up in their opener against Hearts last week. They lost this game by 2-1, but no real disgrace in going down at Tynecastle. Of that team, only Purrington, Edwards and Hawula are actually new. The rest were with them last season. You'll be familiar with most of the other names there. They have signed some pretty interesting players, the likes of Jan Danda, regular for Swansea in the 2020-2021 season. They also signed striker William Ako, who you may remember a viral clip going around a couple of months ago from Canada with a guy missing an absolute sitter on the line. Like, think of James Forrest against St Johnstone. Think of Chris Iwelumo for Scotland against Norway. I feel like there was a really obvious one in a Celtic game recently as well. Maybe Paddy Roberts against Rangers a few years ago. Think of all of those and imagine it 10 times worse. It went viral. You've probably seen the clip. And then Ross County decided to sign this guy, William Akio. But he has a knee injury, so he won't feature against us tomorrow. So who knows if this is what their team will look like for the game. A lot of players with decent pedigree there. Ben Purrington, the left back, was a regular for Charlton last season. He started in the friendly we had against them in Wales last pre-season. They've also got Hawula, the forward, who came through Man City's academy about 7 or 8 years ago. So decent pedigree that we'll have to be wary of. I really do think they've signed well. When you look at the players they've signed and where those players were playing in recent seasons, you know, players who contributed for decent teams in England, Charlton, Swansea, etc. I think they'll do quite well this season, Ross County. I actually think it's quite good that we're getting them second game into the season, because I think they'll be slow starters and then they'll probably pick up from maybe October onwards like they did last season. but we know how difficult they were last season. In terms of Celtic, Ange spoke to the media earlier today. The big news that he revealed was that Reo Hatate will miss the game tomorrow. He has been in rehab all week after picking up that injury near the end of the game against Aberdeen. David Turnbull was actually the player who was put forward for press today. I don't think that necessarily means that he's guaranteed to take Hatate's place, but I do think he will take Hatate's place. I think he's the obvious option to come in next to Matt O'Reilly. And as good as Hatate is, I don't think it's a game-defining loss for us. I think Turnbull's good enough to come in and to play really well for us. So I'm quite relaxed about that. The other bit of news is that Carl Starfelt is back and available for the game tomorrow. I don't think he'd be put straight into the starting lineup for the match, given that he's missed all the pre-season. I think he's been back in training since the start of last week. So I think it would be a lot to expect him to start the game. I think Ange will continue with the back five that he has chosen for the last few games, especially last week against Aberdeen. That is, of course, Joe Hart in goals, Josip Juranovic, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Stephen Welsh and Greg Taylor at the back. In midfield, I think we'll go for Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly and David Turnbull, and then Jota on the right, Kyogo up front and Dyson Maeda on the left. It's difficult doing these predicted 11s at the moment because we have so many options on the bench that could very easily start the game tomorrow. It just depends how Ange is feeling about it. At the moment, we're in an interesting place because we've only got one game a week for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. So it all comes down to whether Ange feels he wants to change things up a little bit. I just get the impression, given that we are in this part of the season where we only have one game a week, that he'll probably stick to the same team as last week, with the obvious exception of Turnbull coming in for Hatate. I think that's how he'll do it. Maybe in future weeks we'll see Giakoumakis, we'll see Abada, we'll see Ralston, etc. Aaron Moy, maybe Starfelt coming back into the team. There's loads and loads of options there, but I just think for tomorrow it'll be the same team as the Aberdeen game, but with Turnbull in for Hatate. In terms of a recent record in Dingwall against Ross County, it's decent enough. 5 wins from our last 6. The exception was the defeat we had on that really horrible Sunday night under Neil Lennon. That was his final game, actually. He was sacked a couple of days later. So apart from that, it's been pretty good. Last season, the key ones to look out for there, both games were relatively tight, especially that one in December where Anthony Ralston scored in the 178th minute, I think it was, when the referee added on all that time. It is worth saying that night our team was very, very different, almost unrecognisable from what we'll see tomorrow. From memory, Liam Scales started that night, Adam Montgomery started, I'm sure Josip Juranovic was even in the right wing, Liel Abada was up front. I think we're more likely to see the kind of performance that we saw in April tomorrow. I see it being a similar kind of game. That was a tough game as well. They did have moments in the second half when it was only 1-0. It was a big win for us at that time, just having come off the cup defeat to Rangers. That was probably the real final hurdle that we had to overcome last season, going to Ross County after having just lost to Rangers. If we had slipped up, maybe it could have got quite interesting, but we found a way to win relatively convincingly, and I think we'll see pretty similar tomorrow. I see it being a comfortable win for Celtic without being anything spectacular. I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory. That'll be the third weekend in a row with 1-2-0 if that is indeed the case tomorrow. It's an interesting weekend of action in the league in all. We play at the same time as Rangers tomorrow, which is always interesting, and of course we do have the Edinburgh Derby on Sunday, which should be worth watching too. Remember that our game is not on television. You'll have to find a way to watch it if you're not fortunate enough to have a ticket. We will have the reaction live after the game with John, so plenty to chat about. That's going to be really interesting if we can't find a link to watch it. I'll be going off radio commentary. So you might want to join us for that and just see how much of a farce it really is. Thanks very much, Sky and the SPFL for putting us in this mess. Looking forward to it. 2-0 Celtic for me. Enjoy your Friday night, enjoy the game on Saturday, and catch up with us afterwards.